There exists a forest that defies the imagination. A forest reigned over by thorns and the heat. A place of unforgiving, arid, and aggressive appearance. Unlike typically idyllic images of rainforests or jungles, this unique ecosystem seems designed to keep out any creature that dare come near. At first sight, it would appear to be a place where finding food or shelter would be impossible, where neither staying still nor moving on brings relief from the sharp prick of thorns, as long as nails and pointed as needles. Only the most sophisticated and malevolent imagination could devise a torture chamber as inhospitable as this. And yet, an implausible number of plants and animals are capable of surviving here. At the southern tip of Madagascar, a broad strip of dry territory, about 100 kilometers wide, extends along the south and west of the coast. The Thorny Forest. The Thorny Forest of Madagascar is one of the most unusual and inhospitable forest ecosystems on the planet. Or at least, that's how it seems. Yet, it is home to an extraordinary collection of animals and plants that have perfectly adapted to the heat and almost perpetual drought. Annual rainfall here barely reaches 1/3 of a litre per square metre. This world of thorns, where it seems impossible even to move, let alone live, is in fact a place of extraordinary biodiversity. "95% of the plants here exist nowhere else in the world." The fauna here is no less extraordinary, moving and living in this strange ecosystem, utterly indifferent to the fact that it bristles with thorns. Among the plants that make this forest such a special place, the strange, long Didiereaceae, known locally as octopus plants, are a highlight. Didiereaceae are a species of thorny plant, looking not unlike a cactus, although in fact their similarities end there. It is these plants that are most characteristic of the thorny forest landscape. Among the most striking inhabitants of these forests are this species of lemur, the rose sifaka, which, despite living in such a hot environment, have silky, thick coats. Sifakas seem determined to live like fakirs, sleeping on their beds of nails. The trees and shrubs they move among are armed with aggressive thorns. But the thick skin of their hands and feet and their dense fur perhaps offer them protection against scrapes and punctures. Added to the toughness of their skin, they are amazingly skilled jumpers and climbers. The thorns of this forest exist for two very specific reasons. They are in fact leaves that have evolved to have as little surface area as possible in order to conserve water. They are also a defensive mechanism to dissuade animals from eating them, as they do with the branches and succulent, water-retaining leaves of other plants. But for the sifakas, it is clear that these preventative measures are of little use. The vegetation of the thorny forest has evolved other extreme adaptations to cope with the aridity of the region, such as thick and succulent trunks, branches and leaves, and waxy or hairy bark. In the early morning, when the air is still cool, almost all the fauna sets about eating. Small troops of sifakas, comprising around a dozen individuals, have a breakfast of the forest's tenderest leaves. Within a couple of months, these leaves will have started to dry out. The uncomfortable, prickly labyrinth is also ideal territory for some tortoises, whose shell and thick scales keep them from harm. The undergrowth is home to the radiated tortoise, another species that is unique to this forest. Large males can weigh 20 kilos or more and live for nearly 100 years. Perhaps one of the secrets to their longevity is their strictly herbivorous diet. And now, after the rains, it's the best time to tuck into some juicy leaves. Succulent fruit and plants make up 90% of its diet. At the same time, taking advantage of the blessed water from the rains, fruit grows and matures. The flowering season in the thorny forest is very brief, so it is vital for animals to synchronize with it to take maximum advantage of the plethora of resources. While the sifakas enjoy a meal of sweet fruits, the radiated turtles embark on their clumsily violent mating ritual. A male pursues a female until the latter complainingly comes to a halt. In order to access her sexual organs, he strikes her relentlessly. An act some onlookers no doubt find utterly bewildering. The tenacity and violence of the assault may even break the female's shell. The sounds of the turtles' somewhat brutal lovemaking echo around the thorny forest where some unique trees grow. Baobab trees, with their gigantic trunks that act as water-storing barrels, thrive in this arid environment. Madagascar's dry region is home to 6 of the planet's 8 existing species of baobab. They are some of the most striking and peculiar trees on Earth. The dry season can last between 9 and 11 months, so they must exploit the short rainy season to the full if they are to produce flowers and leaves. Time is against them. Their high branches are the perfect place for an aerial city. The sakalava weaver builds its nests by braiding vegetable fibers that it collects from the thorny forest. And the cleverly designed entrance of the nest is protection against potential predators. Baobabs create an entire world in their environs, and that even includes the ground. eye-catching three-eyed lizards rummage among the old fruit of the baobab. The dark scales on their nape imitate an ever-watchful third eye. It is their breeding season too, so they mark their territory by a display of head shaking. This turbulent world of thorns is filled with excitement for young sifakas. For their first 6 months, cubs will barely leave their mother's side, exploring the clan's territory and learning about its inhabitants. Nearby, among the branches and thorns, vasa parrots share the sifakas' diet. It's time to look for juicy leaves, and the cub copies members of his tribe and his own mother. Down on the ground, amazing things can be discovered. The baby sifaka is fascinated by the three-eyed lizard's apparently impossible speed. But speed is not always enough to keep you safe. This snake is just as quick as the lizard. And in this case, its third eye proves to be a striking but useless adornment. It is swallowed almost as quickly as it is caught. This lizard will provide the snake with food for a week. Life in the thorny forest is intense. And the baby sifaka decides his mother's lap is the safest place to be. A little milk and some maternal love will help him feel better. While the baby sifaka feeds, the thorny forest gives no respite. In every niche, from the tops of the octopus plants more than 10 meters above ground, to the ground itself, covered with leaf litter, is occupied by the bizarrest neighbors. One of the strangest is the Madagascar nightjar, whose plumage makes it appear not unlike a handful of dry leaves. Toward evening, the small sifaka has to move with his troop. They've decided to come down to ground level to set off on a journey. The first ones down scare the nightjar, who hides a treasure beneath her camouflage. Sifakas will travel through the forest up to 1 kilometer a day, and occasionally they do so by leaping across the forest floor, using their arms for balance. The alarmed nightjar moves away from her chicks, pretending to have a broken wing. She must draw attention away from her chicks at all costs. Once they are alone again, the nightjar returns to her chicks and hides them once more under her warm, dissimulating plumage. The sifakas move on without the slightest intention of harm. Most likely they didn't even see the birds, so intent are they on finding food for dinner before dark falls. They don't see the chameleon either. Like the nightjar, he boasts some splendid camouflage. It might appear that the thorns would not pose any inconvenience to these small reptiles. But sometimes their intended meal holds on tight to the spines, and the chameleon cannot manage to get its prey into its mouth. The sifakas have found a juicy dish for dinner. Some euphobias in the thorny forest can reach remarkable heights. To prevent loss of water, they have barely any leaves, and it is their stems that are responsible for photosynthesis. In place of protective thorns, they have an extremely caustic latex, which irritates animals' mucous membranes and skin. But the sifakas are perfectly adapted to this environment and the plants found there, and the latex has no effect on them. Very few lemurs can take advantage of this milky and nutritious resource offered by the special thorny forest. It's clear that the beings that make up this apparently hostile ecosystem have an extraordinary relationship with each other. It is a unique forest, populated by creatures that have adapted to survive among sharp thorns and spines, toxic juices, and extreme aridity. And yet, despite these disadvantages, the Thorny Forest of Madagascar boasts a unique wildlife found nowhere else on Earth.